promised the panel that I'm going to introduce in a minute and let them introduce themselves, that we're going to share in between our discussion today, llama facts as we gear up for the llama farm. So that'll be fun, right, everybody?
Absolutely.
So what I want to do is I want to welcome everybody. So Adrianne Pettiford, I want you first to tell us a little bit more about you and what you do today.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me, Kevin. So I lead client analytics and compliance over at Pymetrics. What my team is responsible for doing is making sure that all of the products that Pymetrics rolls out end up being fair once they're actually introduced and launched, and that we are demonstrating return on investment and validity for our clients. Pymetrics is a platform, a software as a service organization where we build out gamified assessments, leveraging longstanding behavioral research and science. And we do that in a way that allows our clients to match candidates to their best fit roles and surface talent that in many respects might otherwise not have been identified. So these are typically, untraditional candidates who might not have considered a role, but we can identify a great match for them and deliver value to our clients in that way.
And fits really nicely into our topic today as well. So that's great. Thank you, Adrianne. Appreciate you joining us today. So Wagner, Denuzzo, why don't you tell us a little bit more about you and what you do today?
Sure. Hi, Kevin. Hi, everyone. Great panel. I'm the head of capabilities for future of work at Prudential Financial. We are going through a major transformation, and my team is trying to solve for what are the technologies and the human capabilities that we need to really reinvent the workplace and workforce. So it's very exciting what's happening there.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. And glad that you're here today. And Tony Shaffner, welcome. Tell us a little bit more about you and what you do today.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you, Kevin. And it's wonderful to be here with you, Adrianne and Wagner. So I've spent probably going on 18 years now in human resources and talent acquisition. Started my career at a search firm, spent about 5 years there, kind of building that. It was a startup environment, and then went into corporate recruiting not long after that. Spent about a decade in manufacturing. Most recently was working with AllianceBernstein, which is making a pretty massive headquarters move from New York City to Nashville, which is where I'm based, and it was really a fantastic build out of going from 0 employees in Nashville to over 800 now. So, tons of work in the TA space, and excited here to talk about how we link that with talent management, some of the things that I've experienced as well as others. So thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, because we're constantly having to re-recruit to retain, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
In our organizations today. There you go. So now, before I ask the first real question for the panel, we have Llama Fact 1. Is everybody ready?
Ready.
All right. Llamas were first domesticated and used as pack animals 4,000 to 5,000 years ago in the Peruvian highlands. Did you know that?
I did not.
I did not know that either. All right, let's get to the topic now. So Adrianne, let's start with you. The whole idea of talent marketplace, I would argue, is not new per se. We've been talking about different iterations of this, I think, in my 2 decades in talent acquisition and HR recruiting space. But I think the reality of it, with the impact of COVID in particular, really forcing companies to say, how do we keep the people that we have now? How do we redeploy them? How do we reskill them? How do we use that as a way to recruit individuals already inside our organization and mix with those that are external to better fill our positions, all those good things. And again, Josh Bersin has been quoted as calling it, again, this talent marketplace. Really trying to also bridge candidate and employee experience, something that's very true to my heart. So talk about what you've seen over the years, and especially more recently, even with your customers and the work that you're doing at Pymetrics. What are some of the biggest opportunities when we talk about talent marketplace?
Yeah, so it's a really great question, and quite timely and insightful, despite the fact that we, like as you said, have been dealing with this issue for some time. I think one of the things that becomes increasingly important is to think about kind of the life cycle of the candidate, not just from the perspective of them going on to be an employee, but we really do live in a day and age now where tenures are shorter and shorter, and it's just kind of the way things are. Folks don't join an organization most of the time and stay their entire career. And so we've got to be thoughtful about ushering in candidates in a way that is a good experience, and then leaves them with a positive taste in their mouth, because they're going to leave and they're going to be able to hopefully say good things about their experience at your organization and how they navigated their career progression and identifying other opportunities internally, that will then go on to not only lead them to hopefully referring other folks who would go on to do well in your organization, but really in many cases, we're talking about folks who then go on to be your customers. And so it really is an issue of brand management. And so in this time that we're dealing with, kind of coupling these short tenures with this really important need for your candidates and employees to go on to be ambassadors for you, it really is important from that perspective. And internally, you really want to have folks who you can hold on to and keep that institutional knowledge, even though we have these shorter tenures. So now we've got to start thinking about, how do we allow folks to move jobs without moving organizations? And so I think that's really what we're dealing with right now.
No, I think it's great. And Wagner, there are those individuals that, what Adrianne was saying about short tenures, but that may come back though, right? If they had a great experience at that organization, and they're either reinstated or they're rehired, and that knowledge gets to come back to the organization. And if their experience was there and positive and solid for them, then that actually helps with that fluidity, which does happen today, especially with companies of any size. So what is your take on this first question as well?
I'm living proof of the boomerang employee.
There you go.
In IBM. I left and I came back 2 years later, and I remember the CHRO saying, I was mad at you for leaving, but you need new experiences, come back. You know, it's an amazing community now. We have to think about the workforce as a universal workforce. We all share the workforce, to be honest. And the world is changing very rapidly. But I want to mention the telemarketplace might have an old idea, because we need to source from different communities, if you think that way. But what's happening right now is that we are realizing that the trends, there's always these trendy spaces that we go through. And it was all about innovation, bring new talent, new thinking. We need new thinking. So it's 60-40 now. Now we are rethinking that, because it's not bringing people from the outside that creates more innovation or a safe environment for experimentation. Yeah. So now companies are rethinking who they are precisely bring from the markets and how they can keep the career velocity of those internal people who actually need new experiences every now and then to really grow capability. So we are moving from a skills-based economy to a capability economy, and capabilities are more complex. So that's why I love what the pymetrics is doing, because you bring it all together. It's behavior, skills, capabilities, and expertise and experiences that actually we might identify in very hidden figures, as we call them. So I'm very interested in finding hidden figures. That's why we use AI and the talent marketplace to find them.
So, Tony, why then does it feel, even today, and with this technology that we have today, with machine learning, with the ability to look at, again, what Wagner was saying, the capabilities, the skills that we have inside our organization, that it's like Groundhog Day, that we're still always looking outside to try to hire somebody in? And then your take on the same question. So why is that the case? Why does it feel that way?
Yeah, I think there's a gap between what we desire as HR professionals and the technology and solutions that exist today to be able to really execute that well internally. We have performance management systems, and we have recruiting systems, and we have our HRIS system that maybe helps us get paid, but those systems aren't really well linked internally to be able to execute an agile talent mobility in a way that that also challenges many cultural norms of organizations. When you start to think about people who are promoted and high potentials and ranking people and providing, you know, differentiated learning and development solutions. Think about if that person was recruited internally by a peer manager of yours when there was an important project that they were working on, and you know, fast forward 2 months and now they're gone. And I think that flies in the face of a lot of cultural norms for organizations that I've been a part of, where it has been a much more structured, rigid kind of career pathing. You know, every couple of years, you know, someone is eligible or up for promotion or can move, versus the speed of the way that things change. You know, all of that accelerated by the pandemic, of us having to say, all right, those plans that we made 3 months ago, we've got to put, you know, half of them on the shelf and move on to new challenges that we face. And that's moving that quickly is very difficult, not only for kind of cultural practices, but certainly for the technologies that we're using to identify talent internally in an agile and very fast fashion.
And then 2020 happens, right? So I mean, I don't say that lightly at all, because I think I was just talking to somebody right before this panel discussion, more on a personal level, but I think it's true for organizations too, that we define ourselves by so much structure all the time and process, that we have to give ourselves the capacity to adapt and recover too, right? When there's something that's changing all the time. And I think if 2020 was that constant impact and change, 2021 already is 10 years of that. So there you go, right? So, but before I get to the next question, everybody, and thanks for that first answer, I've got another fact. Are you ready? Another llama fact. This is a good one. I'm probably going to mispronounce some of these terms, but I'll do my best. So a llama's stomach has 3 compartments. Did you know that? 3 compartments. They are called the rumen, the omasum, probably got that wrong, and obasum. That could be a little song too. Now, a cow's stomach has 4 compartments, all right? But like cows, llamas must regurgitate, that's what you wanted to hear right now, and re-chew their food to digest it completely. Did not know that. Aren't you glad that you know that now? Oh, it gets better. Trust me. Just wait. It gets a lot better. All right, let's move on. Wagner, let's go to you now. Let's get to the next question. So we already touched on some of this a little bit about career pathing. And then I know I've heard in a lot of the organizations in our Candy community and even just the first couple of weeks of 2021, that internal mobility, really differentiating that inside for employees, for that overall, what that experience is like. That's all definitely impacting how we view talent acquisition, and talent acquisition having, again, more of what we're talking about, this combined effort with those that are in HR and talent management inside the organization. So, but when we talk about career pathing and internal mobility and that experience, how do they speak to each other from your perspective? What's going on at your organization?
No, that's incredible you asked that, because we never worked so closely with TAs. So the TA leader is my peer, and we are almost like partners, because you can talk about career principles in our career philosophy, which is very simple. We simplify everything. In fact, this year, talking about 2020, I decided that it is about the pie, the prioritization, integration, and execution.
If you I love pie. Wagner, I love pie.
Sure.
I'm just
so after the holidays, I said, let's introduce the pie concept. And it's working. And it's really a good diet as well.
Say that again. Say that acronym again, what it means.
Is prioritization, integration, and execution.
Okay.
Because the integration piece is what I want to talk about. We are partners because the career guidance is basically, is your career. We all know that, right? But you need to learn and grow and make an impact. That's your role. To be successful at Prudential, that's what you need to do, those 3 things. Then we went further. I said, how can we create a culture that we desire? through activities, actions, and tools, and creating the environment. So we said we want internal mobility to increase. Year on year, we increased by 11%. And that creates the commitment that we have towards our employees, even through transformation. So it's about creating belief that we have their best interests. And because of that, the employee experience generates the best customer experience. So it's incredible what's happening in terms of this system. I call the integrated talent systems. And we use data, of course, we use insights and engagement. So one thing that we miss sometimes is the systems of engagement. How do we engage people? So the talent platform that we have now, we use AI for the CRM, for the candidate relationship management, but we also use for AI for people to get recommendations for learning, understand what are the future skills, the hot skills in the company, in the industry. So all this together has to be a partnership between TA and talent management.
Yeah, I completely agree, because Adrianne, it sometimes, even if the candidate experience is good of me becoming and then getting hired on and becoming part of the organization, it can disintegrate at that point too, right? There's an old, I remember somebody in HR years ago telling me that sometimes we treat new employees, we parachute them into the jungle, right? And let them just figure it out for themselves. So what would you add to that, what Wagner was talking about in regards to how do we get these experiences to gel with one another?
Yeah, I think what's really important is to take this idea or this lens that when you're looking for talent acquisition, you really need to be thinking about learning from the past. To your point, right? You've got these employees who've come in, they've had these really rough experiences. And I don't just mean that from the perspective, what are they going to go out and tell their friends who may decide whether they're going to apply to your company or
and
not?
they will tell their friends.
Right. But I'm really thinking about it from the perspective of if you really are thoughtful about working with candidates and learning more about those candidates before you're even hiring them, you can get a lot of insight about some areas that would be very fruitful to have them grow and develop in ways that would be very valuable to your organization. And when you think about it that way, you can really start to get a lot of foresight that gives you an extra bit of runway when you're thinking about talent acquisition. So now you're talking about hiring someone who is going to go into a particular role, and given the capabilities that they have, you set them up with the right L&D opportunities, and they then will go into your pipeline again. But now you've got this multi-year process where talent acquisition is saying, that person that we're hiring now, we think they're going to be really well suited for this new team that, because of our strategic vision, we're going to launch in 3 years. So now you're starting to be proactive as opposed to having to do what I think too many companies have to do, where they decide, here's a new initiative we're going to roll out, here's a new division or new product we're going to develop, and now we've got to scramble and scurry to staff the team. But really, we can get to a point where we can match our vision with folks that we're hiring today and get them trained up for the role that they will be in 3 years.
Because Tony, no one is in, maybe the unicorns that are out there, nobody's going to have all the bullets that you're looking for, right? In any job description at any given time. So I love what Adrianne's talking about this hiring for potentiality, right? Of the potential of those individuals that could help the business sustain and grow. That's what we're doing when we're in business, when the people that we want to join our organizations. And so what would you add to that to help make that experience more cohesive?
Yeah, so I'll go back to my days when I was in executive search with Eaton, and one of the biggest things that Eaton's a global manufacturing company. I think it has over almost 100,000 employees now, and one of the things when we would launch a search, one of the major questions that we would ask is who internally is most qualified for this role, and why are you not hiring them? And that was a massive differentiator for us going out into the market and saying, what is it that we need to find? So there's a long list of things, but what is it that what either skills or capabilities do we need that we do not have currently that we need to bring into the organization? And Eaton was a wonderful company from a development standpoint, from a training perspective, from a career growth standpoint, but there were still things when you looked at a very unique skill set, or if we were going into an adjacent like acquisition, and we needed someone with some very specific types of experiences. And I think, historically we have had, really well-run organizations have had a large amount of people who know the skills and capabilities that exist within an organization. But now with the systems that exist, and you can look at, consumer products, for example, and I think talent acquisition is going this route of behaving much more like the experience that we get when we interact with, our favorite restaurants or our shopping experiences online. Talent acquisition is going this route, and how can we tee up the right jobs to the right people at the right time? And I think pymetrics is doing some wonderful stuff around AI. It's gonna have to be that artificial intelligence solution, because it's very expensive, and it takes a lot of time to build like wonderful HR capabilities within an organization, to where you can know the universe of skills that exist within your firm, especially if it's a large one. But there are tools that can assist us with that, and again, I think there are gaps that exist today, and a number of different solutions out there, technology that can be blended, or maybe it was used for a certain purpose for external recruiting, and that can be moved internal to an internal perspective, and understanding the skills and capabilities. I think that's just for me a really relevant example of some of the things that I've experienced and I've seen, and it's certainly evolved over the years. And I think with the rapid pace of change, and with remote work on the rise, it's going to be harder and harder for people to know the capabilities that exist in the organization. We're going to have to facilitate that through systems and things that can help us get that data on our people.
Well, the power of the algorithms and these technologies today, and the power, the computing power that we have, is that we can get there and do that, and because and it really helps us at the end of the day, and we're going to segue to that after a llama fact, to more of a tech question, because we have to. I mean, technology has driven a lot of recruiting and hiring for a long time, and it's only going to be more so. And we have to depend on it for us to make better decisions, because we ain't very good at it and as humans. No offense to humans at all, right? I'm not disparaging humans, but let's do a llama fact, and then we'll continue to talk about. Speaking of making poor decisions, you can determine my next fact if you think that's the case. All right. So llama poop has almost no odor. Okay. Llama farmers refer to llama manure as llama beans. It makes for great eco-friendly fertilizer. And historically, the Incas in Peru burned dried llama poop for fuel. There you go. Did not know that. And now you do. Whether you like my choice or not, there you go. So Tony, let's start with you on this one and give us your perspective, and then we'll segue to Adrianne and Wagner. Speaking of technology, so I've been spouting this for a while now, but when I think about the candidate and employee experience, at the end of the day, the individuals, for the most part, they don't care about what the company's technology stack is. Okay. Well, all they care about is either getting the job, or keeping the job, and maybe having other further development opportunities inside of that organization, whatever that means to them. But we know that recruiting technology is a big part of what we depend on now, and it does drive those experiences, right, at the end of the day. So why don't you share what are some of the technology trends that you're seeing in your experience in recent memory, and share some of that with us now. What's shaping the future as all these things that we've been talking about?
Yeah, and I think it's a perfect linkage between TA and talent management. And when I started with AllianceBernstein in October of 2018, there was a decision to launch a specific applicant tracking system, which was different from our HRS system. And we did a lot of work with the vendor. We did a lot of requirements gathering, understanding functionally what we were trying to do. But there was a massive gap from data transferring clean, efficiently, in the right way, over from one system to another. And we made the tough decision to rip out the ATS that we just implemented and to go with a single system solution, because and to work very closely with talent management to understand, listen, what are we trying to do? We're hiring over a third of our population within the next 3 years. So a third of the company is going to have less than 3 years of experience. What do we want? How do we have to serve those people? What are we trying to achieve from a strategic business standpoint, from a talent development standpoint? And when is the right point in time to capture this information? So really what we were trying to achieve is, and I think did a fair job of it, was have candidates enter information once. That transfers over to the employee experience. It automatically populates when you're doing onboarding paperwork, but then it also carries over and information from skills in a resume when you applied transfers over to your employee profile when a new project comes up and you have the relevant skill set. Maybe not at the company, but maybe 2 companies ago you did something very similar, and how do we gain that knowledge? And it was a real struggle to do that when we had disconnected systems and trying to run APIs and the data is just configured differently. For us, a single system solution really was the answer. Now there are also drawbacks to that, and I would love to hear other perspectives from the panel as well. From one of the things for us is that the CRM component wasn't ready yet in a really slick way. Doing assessments was not ready yet in a way, and there's a lot of back and forth with our legal team about validity of assessments and whatnot, which I'd love to hear comments on that as well. I lost that battle, honestly, but yeah, there were some really good things that were core to the system, but definitely, and I think other things from a bolt-on standpoint that we're looking to achieve and to roll out, and really kind of in the process of doing that.
Best of breed, unified suite, a little bit of both. I mean, it's always been a long time in our space in particular. The good and the bad and the ugly and all the in between. Adrianne, you have got some interesting insight, and I think as it relates to what Tony was kind of saying, maybe you could add to as well, about AI career pathing, upskilling, about again, what's going to shape the future more. Why don't you share some of that as well?
Yeah, that's a great point. And so I think where we're headed, and I think I'm confident when I say I don't think it's a trend. I think we're going to see this become an enduring way of doing things.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's just going to kind of fade. But what I think we're seeing is, I kind of think about systems that don't work, right? You mentioned the comment that candidates don't really care about the HR tech stack. They do when it doesn't work. Right?
Well, they do, because it's about the experience.
Yes.
It's about the experience.
And you may not hear them kind of vocalize when it's seamless,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And then nobody really complains. But then when it's a nightmare, when you are trying to apply for a job and they say, upload your resume, and then you have to enter everything into all of those fields right after you've done that, it's a point of frustration.
Yep.
And so what I think we're going to start seeing more and more is we're going to start seeing that data that we're getting from candidates translate across the employee life cycle, and even across employers, right? And so as we get increased integration, to Wagner's point earlier, as we integrate better our systems, we'll be able to take those learnings and the data point across. cost. So one of the kind of values that we offer to our clients is, not only can you bring a candidate in your organization and use that to offer some insight in terms of internal mobility, but those candidates actually can use that same assessment data to determine whether they're a fit somewhere else. And for an organization that is thinking about shaping that candidate experience where they have to say, unfortunately, you're not a fit here, isn't it better if you follow that up with, but we think you might be a great fit somewhere else, and here's that somewhere else? I mean, that's got to be a really great experience to be told no, but here's another opportunity. And so I think as we start thinking about how we're integrating better and the data that we're using, we're going to move to a place where we're also just a little bit more generous in terms of organizations seeing this really as an ecosystem where we all need to be collaborating and cooperating if we're going to kind of maximize our abilities to deliver on our promises to clients and customers. I think built into that, we're going to start to see kind of more and more kind of side effects related to equity. I think even without having to try so hard, as we get better about using technology that is pre-audited, and we know that we're pulling out all of the features that are biased, I think we're going to see, as an artifact of that, folks moving up and through the ranks, being more representative of the populations that our organizations serve.
I completely agree on that. And Wagner, segueing to you, is it kind of going back what you were talking about earlier about identifying, capabilities within the organization, and how and speak to that. And I think you got some interesting things too, as it relates to using these technologies that Adrianne was talking about to help skill up parts of the organization too, right?
I'm loving this discussion because it's bringing so much thinking. To answer Tony, I think we decided to go with a data lake because we thought our systems would never talk to each other. So we decided for a data lake. It was working beautifully. So all the dashboards on Tableau, Power BI, everything we do is from the data lake, not from Workday, not from the learning systems, because we have too many disparate systems everywhere. So this data lake is working, and now the world is thinking about position management as opposed to people management. That is the whole thing about FTEs. So now we got a way of actually having dashboards that really distill what are the different workforce mix and how can we really bring that to the leaders. So that's what we chose to do. And it's working well for now. And one day, if it's one single solution is available, we go for it. But what Adrianne is saying is reminds me of what we decide to do, to allow a culture where skills adjacency is a conversation and there's critical thinking beyond the data. So data generates insights if you have accurate data. But we believe in the three systems, the systems of record, the systems of insights, and the systems of engagement. If you don't have one, you can have a marketplace. You cannot have a culture of development. So to Adrian's point, to avoid potential bias and all this, we still believe in the critical thinking that goes into, let's try 75% skills adjacency. People can learn on the job, and that's what's creating opportunities, because people are so afraid of not having all the skills and capabilities in their roles. And I think this is shifting the dialogue, because things are changing so much. And Adrianne, I agree with you, is going to be here for good. This is not a trend. But what's going to change is what happens when we don't have roles and titles to get all this benchmarking, because now it's all based on titles, benchmarking externally, internally. There will be a time there will be no roles or titles or job descriptions. There will be projects and that's it. But we are probably 10 years from now, maybe. But it's very exciting what's happening. But I believe in the power of critical thinking as well. And I tell you this, one thing that we discovered with the COVID crisis, intimacy is creating high-performing teams. Intimacy because I know what's behind you in your background, because I see your kids, I see your spouse. Intimacy is creating such a commitment to each other that I haven't seen that in the workplace, because in the workplace we bring in our whole selves, but not really. We are in the environment and
Right.
we do what others do.
Yeah.
So everything is changing, but the power of data and insights that Adrian is talking about is giving us support to think differently and actually evolve our bias and understand that, there is bias in the system.
We saw, well, through our data and our conversations with those in our Candy community this last year and participated in our research, and even those that didn't, there was this greater level of empathic communication between employers, candidates, and employees that I've never seen before in being on this earth. And I think that this forced transparency and the remoteness that we've all been experiencing, I think, has also given rise to that intimacy that you're talking about.
Yeah,
right there. I would agree. I hope that we can hold on to some of that as it makes us better, healthier organizations too going forward. Right. We are getting closer on time, but I've got another fact I've got to share. I've got to do it. All right. So here we go. Ready? Llamas have been, I didn't know this either. I didn't know any of this stuff. Llamas have been used as guard animals. Think about this for a minute. Guard animals for livestock like sheep and even alpacas in North America since the 1980s.
That's it.
They require almost no training to be an effective guard either.
Wow.
Who knew?
I didn't.
I can't wait to see them now. I want to see them. I want to see them doing. I need some. We gotta. Dave, tell them to do like the guard dog action for us, so we can see that. We don't have to do the poop thing, but we can do the other stuff, right? All right. So, Adrianne, we touched on some of this already. We know the pandemic has impacted organizations on like no other thing that we've experienced in recent memory, impacting the way we work, where we work, and really pushing us into the remote world. And we touched on this a little bit earlier in the conversation of why we need to then better understand who we are in our organization because we are so dispersed and remote. How do we do this with technology? How do we get, to use the expression how do we get everybody rowing together, right? In the boat, which is not always easy to do when you're in the same room, much less around the world. So what do we do?
So that is a really great question. And I think it's really important that organizations start to really take a look internally. And we have products called Insight that allow you to kind of understand the capabilities of your teams, regardless of which kind of function they're in, and understand kind of who has what sets of strengths kind of concentrated in their teams, and thinking about how you can leverage those strengths to make sure that we're all on the same page. I think we're going to be moving more and more to a role where we start looking at these capabilities and we start building teams these agile teams based on these distinct capabilities that really work well together, right? So now you've got well-rounded teams that have a diversity of skill sets and capabilities. And when you place teams designed like that across many functions in your organization, you're much more likely to have folks who are on the same page. And I think it also allows you to understand kind of who are the people who would be best suited for certain roles that would be critical to support getting folks on the same page, right? So it becomes increasingly important to identify, I think, a capability that is critically relevant, I think, for almost any role. Things like empathy, right? That's going to be very important. And understanding where and when you need to build that up and really leverage that. But in order to do that, you've got to identify kind of where are you seeing strengths in your organization within your talent, right? Where are you seeing strong people who have empathy that you can partner with other folks and kind of help them understand how to develop those interpersonal relationships that gives your workforce that extra boost? Because we, of course, know that work engagement, something they say having like a best friend at work. really increases work engagement, right? So you really want to be looking at these things, not just the hard skills. Can someone code? Can someone program? But are they going to be able to really empower and motivate your team?
Right, exactly. So Tony, add something to that, because I think you have some, on the ground challenges that you overcame when it came to this as well. Why don't you share briefly, because I think we're about out of time. So
yeah, I think philosophically, there are different skills that we need to develop to be successful in a two-dimensional world. We're primitive creatures. We have lived in 3 dimensions for our entire history, and when we jump off of this Zoom, I'm going to be a little bit less satisfied than I would have been if we were in a room full of people talking about the same conversation.
Sure.
And energy is there, and so I think there is just a different set of skills. Adrianne mentioned empathy. What's two-dimensional empathy look like? How do I get across to someone in this world that I'm truly working and trying to understand, where they're coming from, and I don't know that that has been solved for. I think there are a number of different things that need to go into what the future of work looks like to be able to solve for that, and hopefully, various industries are going to have different challenges, but hopefully it's some combination of a digital and a two-dimensional experience, and then a three-dimensional experience, which fills us up and makes us feel like we're whole.
Well, I agree. And listening is always going to be a big part of that, without having to respond with solution-driven answers. Just listening to each other, I think, can be helpful. Real quick, Wagner, anything you want to add at the end of this, since we're about the sandglasses? I don't know what I'm talking about right now. So go ahead.
Let's not confuse lima beans.
I know, right? That's what I'm saying. I know. Agreed.
Anyway, no, the only thing I want to say is that we do need to start paying attention to user experience. So HR departments are missing a huge part. They always think about all the same functions, but where is that group that talks about digital experiences and user experience and design? That's what captivates people and connects them. So I think that's the only message to people out there. We miss that.
Well, thank you all very much. That was really a lovely, engaging conversation. It's so great to meet you all and to see you again, Adrianne. So thank you so much.